Revolution of common sense.
Revolution of common sense.
A revolution of common sense.
Truth was once common sense, but today, truth is uncommon. Explore biblical truths around faith, business, and politics with Peter Demas. Uncommon sense in current times.
Hey folks, welcome to Uncommon Sense in Current Times. Today, the day of the recording is actually May 26th, and the House of Representatives just voted 215 to 214 to defund Planned Parenthood on May 23rd. In light of the fact that Planned Parenthood has killed over 400,000 babies last year, they did it with $792 million of taxpayers' money. So that's why today I'm excited to talk with Kelsey Pritchard. She is the State Public Affairs Director for the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. And so we're just going to jump right in. So Kelsey, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
So I'm curious. So this particular situation, we have, this was a little bit unusual. Trump has kind of got actively involved in this, is my understanding. Can you tell me a little bit about what he did? There was something a little bit unusual about this law passing than normal.
Yeah, so we're talking about the budget bill. It's what Trump calls the one big beautiful bill that they're trying to get through Congress right now. That includes the president's budget priorities and things that he campaigned on really to fulfill his promises to the American people. And what we have done as the pro-life movement is urge Republicans and the administration to defund Planned Parenthood and abortion businesses through this budget measure. And the reason that we are emphasizing this as the vehicle is because it doesn't require 60 votes in the Senate, so it's something that's actually achievable for us. It's also something that we almost got done in 2017. We fell one vote short when this was a part of the repeal and replace Obamacare package that John McCain voted for reasons other than defunding Planned Parenthood, as I'm sure you and viewers remember. But so we've gotten close before. It's in the bill that passed the House. We've gotten a lot of really good feedback from Republicans generally that they're engaged and enthusiastic to get this done this year. And so we're really hopeful. There's a lot of steps left ahead as this heads to the Senate. We're not to the finish line yet, nowhere near it yet, but we've cleared some big hurdles. So
walk us a little bit behind the scenes, because there was like 20 plus hours of debate at the Rules Committee on this. What was to you, what was kind of like the most surprising, or what stood out to you the most on that?
I think that started at 1 a.m. I don't remember what night it was. Was it Wednesday or Thursday? And then it basically went straight to the House floor a few hours after that. And then they got it done. I think it was 5 or 6 a.m. Eastern time, or my time, Mountain time, when they got it passed and got it through the House. And so really amazing work on Mike Johnson's part, rallying people together, because of course there are all sorts of different priorities that people are bringing to the table. You've got the Freedom Caucus and those who are in the very conservative camp who want to see major, budget cuts and more fiscal responsibility. And then you've got the social conservatives and people who are saying we've got to get this bill through because of defunding Planned Parenthood, not just for the reasons of abortion, but because they're also they're doing gender transitions on minors. So you've got all sorts of different things in the bill. You've got people who are more focused on national security and immigration. And so amazing work on Mike Johnson's part to get this through the House and to get it done before Memorial Day, just like you said they would.
So now it goes to the Senate. You said before the Senate, it missed on the Senate. What hurdles do you see this time? Because obviously you don't have to hit the 60, but you still got to hit 50, and it's still pretty tight in the Senate right now anyway. So what hurdles do you see going forward in the Senate on this?
I think it's just making sure that Republicans know that this is a priority and not something that can be dropped. And because there are so many different things in front of them, so many things they have to think about with this bill, we, as the pro-life movement, as conservatives, Republicans in this country, we just need to keep reminding them that this has to get done in this bill, and it can't be taken out of the bill. And so one way or the other, they have to finally defund Planned Parenthood and get Americans out of subsidizing the business that is responsible for the #1 cause of death in our country. And so I think that is the biggest thing. Of course, there's always moderates who will whine and complain about these things and express their opposition, and some of them who have called themselves pro-life, yet they, when it comes down to it and actually doing something about it, they may complain. And so we saw a little bit of that in the House with Mike Lawler and a couple of other moderates. Fortunately, they didn't cause enough of a problem to try to stop the bill or to try to actually take the measure out. And so we just need to see that kind of momentum in the Senate. We're hopeful that we will with Leader John Thune. He's been really great to work with, and he's a pro-life leader there in Washington, D.C.
So I'm curious, do you think part of the problem that we have is by putting these measures in with all this other stuff? So if I, for example, did not like 20% of the bill, but I do like the pro-life part of it, and I'm not saying I do. I haven't delved deep enough into it to know. But if I were sitting there and I'm like, I can't vote for these 20%, and I vote against it, now all of a sudden it looks like I'm voting against pro-life. Do you think that actually helps or hurts in this situation by lumping so much in one big bill?
Yeah, I mean, it can, in theory, cause problems, and maybe, it's not a perfect process, that's for sure. I think we see it as President Trump has still quite a bit of political momentum, and there are people who want to see things get done that he campaigned on, and that's essentially what this bill is made up of and what embodies the entire bill. And so it's not just Republicans that are saying, you've got the speaker and the majority leader trying to usher this through. It's the Trump administration who wants to get this through and get this done in one big, beautiful bill. And so we want our priority to be a part of this one big, beautiful bill that's going to get passed and to finally get us out of subsidizing abortions, gender transitions, and harm to women.
So are there senators out there that we need to call? So someone listening to this from certain states, is there some that you see that we need to reach out to? Because one of the things, the little bit of lobbying that I've done, and there's two parts to it I don't think a lot of people understand, which is a lot of times lobbying is just to keep people from fighting it. Like, we know you're going to vote against it, but let's just try not to raise problems to do it. And then the second part is there are people who are on the fence because of some areas or another that may have concerns. There are people listening to this that may have senators in their state that can call. Is there anyone there that you would recommend that they reach out to in this situation?
I would particularly emphasize, if you have Republican senators who represent you, that they're the ones to be calling, they're the ones to be emailing or writing letters to. And I think, they're getting a lot of attacks, or they will be getting a lot of attacks from Planned Parenthood, from the left, vehement, angry people who, when they call, they're not so nice to talk to. And so I think what we can offer is a tone difference and a shift in the way that we speak to our representatives, and, to tell these people, tell our senators that we're praying for them. This is a priority. We need them to get this done. This is why. It's because we don't want to fund the murder of unborn children, the harm to women, and just to tell them that this is the moment. This is the time to get it done, and urge them and say that you're cheering them along on the sidelines.
So when we look at this and we see this, one of the things that I was shocked that happened when Roe got overturned, abortions actually went up. So why do you think that happened? And then would that bill actually address this issue, or is that, and I'm sorry asking a compound question here on it, but does this bill address it, or does this kind of do almost the same thing, which seems to be a victory in almost kind of words, but in actions it doesn't seem to help?
Yeah, so Planned Parenthood is the biggest abortion provider in the country. And we know how loud they have complained about Title X cuts that the Trump administration have imposed, and that's about $20 million. Well, this would be about $529 million to Planned Parenthood. And if we are already seeing Planned Parenthoods that are shutting or saying that they're going to close because of Title X money, you can bet that they are going to be in big trouble if they lose their Medicaid funding and they're defunded through this budget bill. That could be huge to shut down more Planned Parenthoods. Now, what you bring up is a problem, and there's unfortunately not one quick, easy solution to it. And what you're talking about essentially is that you have a tale of two Americas. You have a number of blue states that allow abortion at the viability point or literally at any point in pregnancy. And then you have these great red states that have life at conception laws or heartbeat laws, or some of them have 12-week laws. And so you've got two different kinds of states out there. And then what's happening is these blue states have something called shield laws, which allow their abortionists, their abortion drug mills, essentially, to send abortion drugs to women in red states, and they can do the abortion that way through the mail because the Biden administration allowed abortion drugs to be sent via mail and not require a doctor visit. Of course, this is also a problem for abortion coercion and abortion poisoning because a lot of the times these pills aren't going to the women. They are going to an abuser, they are going to a trafficker, and a woman is taking them under pressure or unknowingly she's being poisoned by them. And so this is a huge problem. There are a lot of different things that I think we have to do to attack this problem. But it's, if we just look at the last few years, it's amazing that Roe fell. It's amazing that we have about half the states that have pro-life laws. The next big thing on the list is to defund Planned Parenthood, and there's going to be steps after that, but this is going to be huge for the movement and for unborn children in this country.
Now, Planned Parenthood recently just got exposed by the New York Times of all. I mean, the bastion of conservative media right there. But they exposed Planned Parenthood for botched abortions and just all sorts of medical malpractice. For just to summarize it succinctly. What does this tell you about what's going on with Planned Parenthood? Because it's not the Planned Parenthood of, say, 30, 40 years ago. So what does this tell you about Planned Parenthood now?
I mean, it just tells us how bad it actually has gotten at Planned Parenthood that the New York Times is calling them out. And it's not just them. We saw NPR. We've seen other kind of mainstream media in the States start to call them out and do these pieces about them. It's because these things are actually happening. The New York Times article talked about a woman where they placed an IUD. They failed to do a pregnancy test. Her baby was stillborn. They talk about a Planned Parenthood in Nebraska where there was a sewage leak for days that they didn't address, and women were throwing up. Patients were throwing up because it was so disgusting. It smelled so bad and it was so gross in there. And then, of course, there are these other things that the New York Times and others won't report, but there are women who have actually died because of Planned Parenthood or at Planned Parenthood. And there was an 18-year-old girl in Colorado in February. She got an abortion and she was about 22 weeks along, about the time a baby could survive outside the womb. Not only did Planned Parenthood do that abortion and take the unborn child's life, but when she suffered complications, when she was bleeding more than they expected, they waited to call the ambulance. They admitted that to her grandparents. And then when she got in the ambulance, they told the ambulance to leave the lights off and leave the sirens off so as not to draw attention to the pro-life people outside their facility. And she died in that hospital very soon after because they didn't get her emergency care soon enough. And so she's not the only one. There are several women who have died because of an abortion at Planned Parenthood. And so we, absolutely should defund them because they kill unborn children, but they're also killing women and making women suffer.
Are they, and I really don't know this answer, are they subject to medical malpractice laws, et cetera? So like in this particular situation, can the grandparent sue Planned Parenthood under medical malpractice? Because it's not always doctors that are performing, it could be PAs, et cetera. Are they covered under that?
I believe so, but I think it probably depends upon the state. And unfortunately, Colorado is an awful.
Yeah.
It's just become as blue as California in some ways under their governor. And they just changed their abortion law to allow abortion at any point. They have all sorts of loopholes for the abortion industry. So they don't have pretty much any medical health safety regulations on them, just like any other medical clinic or hospital or facility would. They don't have those regulations. And so they can get away with a lot more than any other medical entity could. And it's really disgusting. And so I think it depends upon the state where you live. And unfortunately, Colorado has become a very terrible place.
Yeah, I've talked to several people, wrote an article about they just passed the Kelly Loving Act, which is where children could be taken away from parents because they choose to use the name they called them as opposed to another name. And there's just so much seems to be happening in Colorado. I mean, they've been, it's unreal what's happening there. But now then, when you listen though to Planned Parenthood, and they talk about, well, we do cancer screenings, we do mammograms, we do Pap smears. But what's interesting, when I go to their website, almost every bit of their website deals with sex without consequences,
Yep.
sex without, it's just, you can, and it's whether, the probably the best thing that I see on there, which I don't think is a good thing, is basically free birth control. But that seems to be the best thing that they seem to offer. Now, I'm not saying that it's not on there, but at a casual glance, I couldn't find the cancer screenings and mammograms that's there. Why is it that people seem to believe it? I mean, their own website, I mean, like I said, if you got to search to find something like that, why do people believe it? Because that's how they're maintaining a lot of their political clout, is by women's services.
Yeah. Well, Planned Parenthood is a very sophisticated political PR machine. That is what they do best. That's why they still exist. And that's why they make so much money and they take so much of the share of the abortion market. So this talking point that they are saving lives from cancer and whatnot, it's like their number one talking point that they have disseminated amongst their minions and that they're using over and over and saying. What they're not telling you is that cancer screenings, breast exams, Pap smears, those things have all gone down by 70% over the last several years. Abortions have gone up. Gender transitions have gone up. Their spending on Democrats, which was $70 million in the last election, that has gone up. And they will tell you of a handful of anecdotes that they have where they helped a woman, but they won't tell you those other stories that we know where women died, and they won't even acknowledge the unborn child at any point in pregnancy. And they brag about the 400,000 lives that they took in 1 year alone through abortion.
So it's kind of, yeah, if I kill 400,000 people, but I save a handful of people with through cancer screenings.
Yeah.
I guess when you look at that and you recognize but there has to be some type of oversight, I would imagine, if they're getting this much money, this much taxpayer dollars to it. What oversight is there over this organization?
It seems like very little. And they, going back to the services that women do get that aren't abortion, that might be actually good services, they're very, very limited in what they offer. And they want you to think that women are going to get cancer or die of cancer if we take away their funding, when the reality is that the Medicaid funding follows the woman. And there are community health centers that outnumber Planned Parenthoods in this country 15-1. So you can go to one of those, get better care, not throw up because of a sewage leak, and you will have more comprehensive care. So if you have more, things that need to be addressed, or, things that different kind of practice medical doctors can help you with, because oftentimes at a Planned Parenthood, there is no medical doctor. So they offer much more comprehensive care, better care, and they're just all over the place. There's much more available. And so that money will follow the woman, and she'll get better care when she doesn't go to Planned Parenthood.
Okay, so and remind me how much taxpayer dollars they got again. I can't remember what that number is.
It was nearly $800 million just in the last year alone, and that accounts for about 40% of their revenue.
So they get $800 million from taxpayers. They take a little less than 10% of that, turn right around and pay for Democrats to give them more money on it. So in reality it's almost like a pass through back. Then from that, they I guess then my question is by doing such, it's like it just seems like they're if they were to eliminate the volume of abortions, they were eliminate the volume of campaign contributions, they were to do a lot of that stuff. It seems like they can also help almost fund themselves for the cancer screenings to do a lot of that stuff. Again, I haven't done the math. I'm kind of processing this question because it just seems like that's a whole lot of money that's kind of flowing through. And if we eliminated the abortions, then we could actually use it for women's services, in addition to other pieces that we have. But I guess that's logical, and this is not a logical problem. Am I close to thinking this correctly? Am I so?
If that was their priority, like they say it is right now, is they're lobbying people in Congress and running ads to try to prevent their defunding, they absolutely would have done that a long time ago. The truth is that their business is abortion. That's why they exist, and that is how they make money. And so that's what they're here to do. And they're going to talk about the other things all day long, the very minimal things that they do on the other side. But the truth is that 97% of the time when a pregnant woman walks into Planned Parenthood, she gets an abortion.
So this is almost comical when I ask this question because it seems like, but if their purpose is to not have unwanted children, is what they claim for the abortion, then why do they not push for abstinence? Why do they not push for sexual purity, sexual morality? They don't promote that at all, like one iota. Do they do that? But yet, if I don't have sex, I can't get pregnant, and therefore it is not an unwanted pregnancy because I'm not having sex. So why is that? If that's their ultimate goal, it's logically inconsistent to do that. Why do you think they don't promote that at all?
Well, they've become an entity of darkness, to be honest. They've become an evil entity, and they
Right.
really have since the beginning. If you look at their roots, if you look at Margaret Sanger and her eugenic aims at the very beginning, what they were trying to do, this is who they are. It's who they've always been, and they haven't gone toward the light at all. They've just gone deeper into the business of death and destruction. And for those babies who do make it out of the womb, they want to target you with gender transitions and confusion and pain and misery there. And so it's not unfortunately, it's not an entity that has in any way been redeemed or sought to become a place of goodness and light. They are dark and evil.
So do you think that as especially Christians or the church, do you think that we're messing up by fighting this downstream, that we've kind of given up the battle of, well, they're going to have sex anyway, so let's attack the abortion side of it only, as opposed to attacking upstream and minimizing it from there? Do you think we've made that mistake? Or do you think it's well, we have to start downstream and work our way up? What's your thoughts there on that?
I think we have to do both if we can, and I think there are different people they'll work on one side versus other entities or people that'll work on the other. I think it truly is the role of the church to remind Christians and people growing up in the church that this is God's design for sex and for men and for women, and this is why. There's a lot of pain when you don't follow that, and the world will lie to you. But this is the truth. And we don't talk about that anymore in church, I don't think. I don't hear about it very
No.
often anyway. Or maybe once a year they bring it up in a sermon where they tell you to send your kids to the nursery and to kid ministry. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about it in our small groups. We need to talk about it with each other and not give up on this, because I know the stats. The stats are bad when you look at them at how many people wait until marriage, but it would be so game changing if even just Christians did this and people
Right.
who are a part of the church did this and believed this. Once again, I know that a lot of us in the evangelical world are concerned and talk about homosexual immorality. We should be just as concerned, if not more concerned, about heterosexual immorality because it is more pervasive.
I agree 100% with that. I'm surprised at the lack of boldness that the church has shown in this topic. All right, I guess one kind of final question, because you mentioned the abortion pill, and I'm assuming there has to be something that can be done. Do you have work plans in the works to start taking that on? Because that's also causing a lot of problems for women, especially who are not under medical care with it. Is there a plan to take on the abortion pill, or at least shipping of the abortion pills?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be a multi-pronged approach. And we've already seen some of the states do what they can. And that is in Texas, we have Attorney General Paxton. He's got a lawsuit against this abortionist in New York that keeps sending pills that kill their babies and harm their women. And so there's that lawsuit that's happening. There's a similar lawsuit in another state, I think it's Louisiana, that has a lawsuit. So they're working at it from the state angle. I think that a lot of people think that will go to the Supreme Court and shield laws could be addressed there. At the same time, the FDA needs to take a look at these pills, because when they were reviewed, they did not receive the same amount of review that any other drug does. They were never tested in minors, for instance. And of course, we know that minors take them. So they need to be reviewed. Mail order absolutely needs to be ended somehow by this administration at some point, and sooner rather than later, we pray. But there are multiple things that need to happen. And the FDA, I mean, even if you're not considering the unborn child, which is hard to fathom, if you just look at how dangerous they are to the women themselves, there was that study that came out, a couple studies that showed 1 in 10 women going to the ER after taking these drugs. Like, can you imagine any other like run-of-the-mill drug requiring 1 in 10 people going to the ER? Why would they not be reviewing that and taking a look at that and restricting this, at least calling for, inpatient visits before giving these drugs out through the mail? And so a lot of things have to happen. We, as the people at the church, we have to pray about these things. We can't underestimate that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, and the power of prayer. And so we need to continue to pray, especially right now as we see the abortion numbers go up and more women be harmed and more unborn children be killed in this country.
So, for people that want to know more about this, and want to know more about this bill, want to know about where their senators stand on a lot of this stuff, where can they go? How can they find out more about the Susan B. Anthony pro-life center? Where can they learn more about that? Where can they learn more about what's happening out there and how they can get involved? Even if it's just a matter of a phone call or an email, how can they get involved in this?
Yeah, go to svaprolife.org. We've got a lot of information there. We've got the latest news if you want to see the latest on where the bill is at. If you want to learn more about Planned Parenthood and defunding Planned Parenthood, we also have a podcast, and our season right now is focused on the horrors of Planned Parenthood. It's called Exposed: Abortion in America. If you want to check that out and learn more about the things that are happening there. And then, just call your senator, call your representative, because of course it's going to go through a House vote again after the Senate sees it, and it's going to have to go through conference committee. So keeping this in front of everyone at the forefront, this is going to be important. And this is where the pro-life movement, this is where we exceed, is on our outreach and our passion, and letting our members know that they need to care about this as much as we do. And so this is an opportunity to really make a difference and to finally defund Planned Parenthood and big abortion.
All right. Well, Kelsey, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you being on the show. It was very informative, and we will pray that the Senate passes this and hopefully it doesn't get tied back up in the House again. So again, I appreciate it, and we know Trump will sign it. So let's just pray it gets past the Senate, and we can start seeing some impacts that way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate it.